What's going on, you guys? It's your Huggable Hipster here, and welcome back to the channel. Before we get into today's review, I want to give a huge shout out to Biowaer and EA for sending me a review code of Dragon Age The Veilguard. Biowaer did not see the contents of this review before its release. And before we get into today's review, I just wanted to also let you all know that there is going to be a lot of spoilers. So if you have not played Inquisition, if you have not played Veilguard, I would highly recommend watching a playthrough, seeing story videos, lore videos, anything like that, really to brush up on what these games are. If you guys don't mind spoilers, enjoy the video. The story of a game is one of the most important parts. Wheels turning, moments going from just another interaction to something weighted in significance. Dragon Age The Veilguard brings to life a miraculous story, coating its world in shades of pinks and greens and delicate hues existing in the consequences of the choices you've made. The characters build this world up into something charming, miraculous, and at points emotionally devastating. Seeing as this was my first time experiencing the world of Dragon Age, I wasn't sure what to expect. Seeing how immersive the mechanics and character interactions were at points took me by surprise and reminded me of my time with Baldur's Gate 3. The sharp, witty remarks made by Solas, the kindness displayed by Varric, it all came down to a very pointed, special experience of a game that's now become one of my favorite core memories. What's going on, you guys? It's your Huggable Hipster here, and welcome back to the channel. Today, let's dive into my review of Dragon Age The Veilguard. Dragon Age The Veilguard takes place 10 years after Dragon Age Inquisition and sets up the story so that this time around, Solas and the gods are the ones to be stopped. Now, just as a disclaimer, I did not play Inquisition before I played Veilguard. Veilguard and Dragon Age and the entire world of Dragon Age in itself is completely new to me. I looked into the story of Inquisition and the romance between Solas and the Inquisitor just to get a little more of a backdrop. I would say, though, if you did romance Solas in Inquisition and go into this game, there is a very specific ending that links with Inquisition that I would highly recommend. If you have played Inquisition before and you're not so sure about getting into Veilguard, get into Veilguard. One of the endings is absolutely amazing, but we'll talk about that later. You don't have to necessarily play any of the previous Dragon Age games, but from what I'm experiencing, playing Inquisition would have helped my understanding of Solas and Varric and all of the characters as a whole, even the story of Dragon Age as a whole. Needless to say, I went down into a Dragon Age black hole that I was all too happy to catapult myself into. Seeing how you meet Varric for the first time and how the bond of Solas and the Inquisitor carried over into Veilguard was truly wonderful. It's really nice to see how the story was carried out and how it held a great significance and weight, not just with how the narrative design was accomplished, but the choices within the narrative design, seeing each moment as either a victorious leap and hurrah or a monumental fail. Veilguard created this ebb and flow within the story at certain points that brought me to tears, and at other points it felt strained and forced. The writing of this game caught me off guard in so many ways with how both good and strange it was at points. A major critique I have of the writing is how there comes certain points in the game where everyone was being so nice to one another. No debates, no quarrel, no real tangible disagreements. I know, a strange critique, but hear me out on this. In a lot of games that rely on substantial amounts of character interactions for the story's advancement or certain quest lines, the way certain characters interact with the playable character is crucial in how the story is told. At certain points in Veilguard, our team would meet up in the kitchen or the main common room to discuss either a plan of attack or how we were all doing thus far. A lot of these discussions, while substantive, lacked arguments or discord of any kind, leaving certain conversations always positive or happy-go-lucky. And while yes, this depends at times on what dialogue options you choose, these always happy moments felt bland, unrealistic, and leaving some of the story points in the game feeling lackluster and boring. Now, the mechanics of Veilguard are so much fun and add a layer of dynamism to the characters, the bosses, and even the cutscenes. While no, you can't use any mechanics or controls in the cutscenes other than choosing the dialogue options, it's the way in which you attack a character or use a spell in the game and how it shows up the same way in the cutscene in its vibrancy or sameness and how it's applied when utilizing it when playing, if that makes sense. The spells that can be used and how each party member has specific things to use during their attacks made the experience of playing through the game really exciting. I mainly used Balara and Nev. Once Emmerich and Davrin came into the picture, I also used them in my party as well. During the story, you could also romance any of your party members, and I chose to romance Davrin. This game has a lot of carefree fun, and that's reflected in the narrative design at points and the mechanics. This is the kind of game you sit down with after a long day with a hot cup of tea and a warm blanket. It's a game that's good for the soul and has incredible replayability. So if you're looking to just sink a few hours into a game over the weekend, you can easily easily do that with this. There's so many different things that you can do with this game, so many stories to go into, so many characters to really sink your teeth into by way of their quest lines and importance to the game. I played this title on the PS5 and had no major issues, be it graphical or mechanical. The bosses in a lot of games, because of the speed of them, are usually the acid test for how fast and how well a game will run, if it slows down, etc. The game kept up the pace and wasn't lagging in any way, so for those of you playing on PS5, you will have a great time with this title. From poisoning to chilling your enemies, there is a lot to do when it comes to battling your opponent. I say this from my perspective because I know how varied certain mechanical and graphical issues can be, so I realize that there is going to be issues with someone who is playing their PS5 somewhere and they have graphical hiccups, whatever it may be. I'm just saying, for the entirety of my time playing, I had no issues, so that's what I have to go off. I just want to give you guys a fair warning right now. The entirety of the next section is going to be dedicated to Solas and his character. Are we surprised about this? No. When I was writing the notes for this review and looking more into what Solas' character was about in the previous title, I knew I needed to dedicate an entire section to the elf that everyone loves. When I saw the progression of his story, it reminded me of Astarion, the way of his demeanor to even believing he can't be loved, as if leaving like Edward Cullen during the middle of a conversation, cold, unbothered, calculated, was the right thing to do in Inquisition, but I digress. While he is to a degree a background character in this title, not the main villain, but also not the main antagonist, I felt as if his character was sorely underutilized for a good percentage of this game. He was a critical part of Inquisition, and each time I got the chance to have my rook interact with him in Veilguard, I felt the same way I did as when I got to interact with Astarion. He's such a multifaceted character to the degree of being manipulative, cunning, and empathetic even. I know it's very counterintuitive to have a manipulative / empathetic character, but it kind of works actually with him. Now, manipulative, empathetic, they're both complete opposites. And you're probably saying, Ariel, how can a character be both manipulative and empathetic? It's true. In Inquisition, you see the love and you see the care that he has for the Inquisitor. Same care to a degree that you see him have for Rook at the very end of the game. Now, there is a very specific ending. I was talking about this earlier, but there is a very specific ending. You can go through an entire quest line. I'm not going to go through it here because it would take forever. You can go through an entire quest line and you can actually give Solas a second chance. Now, if you romanced Solas previously in Inquisition, there is an entire ending for you. You go through an entire quest line, but basically you are giving Solas a second chance. You're basically going through, and not to quote Tyrion Lannister, but you are convincing him that he's not the monster that everyone thinks he is. This is where the Inquisitor and Solas finally get back together, and it is one of the most emotional endings I've seen for a video game that is 10 years in the making. I can't imagine what this ending must mean for those who absolutely loved from the get-go Inquisition, because this is the ending that the Inquisitor and Solas truly deserved. With completing the main story and game in 27 hours, and it taking a little to get into, when things started to rev up, the tears flowed and the giggles were plenty. I cared about characters in this game. So many of them held such importance. I'm really looking forward to going back into this game and doing each character's quest lines to see how they were done. I also appreciate the inclusion of a non-binary character, Tash. They were so fun to get to know, and I truly appreciate the developers adding in something that brings more inclusion into the game. Allowing players to see themselves as a character is something so important. Even in the character creator, you have the option to create a non-binary or trans character. Love that more and more companies are including these options to show people that they are seen. Much like Stained Glass, the story and existence of Dragon Age The Veilguard is layered and coded in this multifaceted spectrum of lights, sorrows, and laughter. When the game came to the final fight, I had to choose which characters were going into different points of battle. A thought crossed my mind of, I don't want to lose any of them. Because much like a great book, you never want to see the characters you've gotten to know perish right before your eyes. And yeah, while it's sad, I'm glad the game got to a point of where it made me feel sad. It made me feel hurt. A great story, whether it be for good or bad, always hurts. That's why it's so memorable. But you guys, that was my review on Dragon Age The Veilguard. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you all like my face and what I do, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell down below. May you find your worth in the waking world, your hunter. Stay casually nerdy, and I will see you all in the next video. Umbasa.